Okay, just a quick video on how to filter down your Romsets with MAME and other Romsets like FBNEA or whatever it might be. You get a lot of files in that setup, and you probably don't want to play. In this case, in the latest MAME section, there's probably 44,000 plus different Romsets. You want to play maybe the best couple of hundred that you're after based on the criteria that you want. You want a quicker way rather than having to scroll through all of these games. I've got another video um, based on Romlister, which shows you how to do this as well, using that tool. But this is using Arcade Italia website, ADB, the Arcade Database, which is a really good way of filtering down as well. It's pretty easy. So before I start, I'll just quickly go over some terminology to make sure it's all clear. So here, for example, I've got a folder and it's full of Romsets. Every zip file is a Romset, and they're called Romsets because they've got a set of ROMs in them. So if I open one, we've got here Dudonpachi, so Dudonpachi Romset, and the zip file, I think you all know anyway, a zip file is just a file that is an archive essentially. It can have one or many files inside it, and they can be compressed. They can be optionally compressed. So if we open one of the ROM sets like Dudonpachi, and you can open it in whatever you want. Windows can open it natively, or you can use an application for it. I use 7-zip, but it doesn't really matter. So if I open that up, I can see here we've got 12 ROMs inside it. So each individual file is essentially a ROM. So typically it would be on that arcade PCB of Dudonpachi. It's got 12 chips on it that are needed to run the game. So they're basically extracted from that chip and written to a file, and these are the 12 that are needed. So in the Dudonpachi ROM set, there are 12 ROMs. That's just in case as I go through the video I use the wrong terminology, but this is what it is. These are ROMs. A zip, you can have this is a ROM set, and you can have a game ROM set like this, or a BIOS ROM set, or a device ROM set, I guess. So any sort of collection of ROMs that serve a purpose, but obviously the only ones we're interested really in are game ROM sets. Yeah, in this example, I've got 7,000 pretty much for FBNear, and I don't want to put 7,000 on my, whether it's a Raspberry Pi or a PC that's got a front end for MAME. I just want a few that are playable, high quality, the ones I want to filter that quickly and easily. So what we'll do is just run through how we can do that using the Arcade Database on Arcade Italia. So if we bring up that website, I'll put all the links in the comments, so just check that for the links. So I've just clicked on machines over here. Now you can see if we were going to do this based on the latest release of MAME, 0.247, we'd have about 44,000 ROM sets of one description or another. Now, one quick and easy filter on Arcade Italia is this MAME cab only. So if I hover over that, you can see this would hide all of the BIOS ROM sets, the device, consoles, mechanicals. I think it even includes Mahjong games as well as Freak machines there and slots and everything else. So it's kind of a good quick hit to reduce all of the stuff that's really unlikely to be needed. Now, you should notice that on here it says things like BIOSes, it hide BIOSes. What we're doing here is only filtering games from a big list that you have. It won't do anything about making a game that didn't work before work now, or a game that did work before not work now. It's not going to make any change in compatibility. So what you want to do before you use the filter is just make sure you've got a ROM set collection that you're happy with and it works with the emulator that you're using. And the only problem is you just want to reduce the number. And typically the easiest way to do that when you're reducing ROM sets is to have an unmerged set. And I've got another video which I'll link to, but it talks about what's unmerged, what's a parent, what's a clone, what's a split set, and everything else. But if you've got unmerged ROM sets, they don't rely on each other, and each ROM set then has all the files in it that it needs. So as well as the game ROMs, it'll have the BIOS ROMs that if it needs any, or the device ROMs that it needs if it needs any. So basically unmerged sets are easiest to work with, but once you're happy with your collection anyway, just make a copy of it, obviously, because you don't want to make a mistake on a working set. But once you've got your copy, come into this tool and we can start filtering it down. So for the reasons that it's got there, I think ticking the MAME cab only option is a really good idea, just to get rid of everything that is very unlikely to be needed, really. So if I tick that, you can keep track of what you're filtering, because here it says, well, you had 44,000, I've ticked that. If I press search now, I've got 10,000. So there's a stack load of files that aren't, essentially a game, really, of a normal sort of description. But what we want is, well, what I want anyway, is a lot less than 10,000 games. So what I'm going to do is have a quick look through the filters that it gives me. So I'm going to keep the latest release ticked here, and all that's going to do is base its available output. And this is just the games that are included in this 10,000, so it gives you a quick view of what's currently there. I'm going to keep 0.247, even though my ROM set might be based years before this one and not have a lot of the games. I'll keep it based on the latest in case I'm using a newer set, because ultimately what this would do is produce a list of games that you want, and then it can copy them out of your main set to a new one that is just like the best of, or your favorite list. And if something doesn't exist in your current set and it tries to copy it, well, it would just skip it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. It just try to have a look for the files that you include. So if you include the latest rather than going back to a particular version, it's just a bit more of a complete option, really. Okay, so everything really is under additional filters. If we hit that, we can start filtering. So whilst we've got 10,000 on our list at the moment, we want fewer. So we could say, well, I only want ROMs that are from year whatever until year whatever. But to be honest, if it's a good game, I don't really mind what year it comes from, so I'm not going to filter based on year, but the option's there. Similarly, now emulation, MAME will mark all of the games to be in a particular state, so working or not working, or somewhere in between where it's a bit imperfect. And I think for my list, if I was going to play it, working and imperfect should be okay, because imperfect's playable. It's just maybe there's a couple, I don't know, graphical glitches, but they're pretty minor. So I'm going to run with working and imperfect. Now, if I go and just change that, working and imperfect, and hit search, I've gone from 10,000 to 8,700, so already a bit of a decent improvement, about another 15% down there. Here I could say, well, I only want parent ROMs, I don't care about the clones. If we did, and typically you're probably fine just going with parents, because there's not necessarily that many clones that would be needed. So you could just do a quick hit, right, I'll have parents, hit search, and I've gone right down from about 8,700 to 3,000. So again, a quick way to filter that down. I think for this example, I'm going to keep all, but we can tweak that. Anyway, so I'll hit back to search just so you get back to 8,000. Go here. Okay, so these filters you've kind of already done, because up here you hit main cab only, so a lot of these are kind of included already. So on those extra filters here, if I took out Mahjong or mechanical or screenless, I probably wouldn't get any difference in my numbers. It says here actually you need to uncheck main cab only to use all filters. So yeah, if you want to be more precise, don't hit main cab only. Okay, next bit, driver. This is just more specifically about the state of the ROMs that have been dumped. So do you want only games where all ROMs have been marked as a good dump, or any particular in relation to the colour? It's got to be good colour. To be honest, because over here we've gone working and imperfect, I don't think it's necessarily needed to tweak this one, so I'd skip driver. I don't think you need that. I mean, obviously you can, but I don't think it's really needed. Input. Okay, so I want games that are buttons or joystick or double joystick, or what else? Stick, triple joystick, but I don't want to tick something that needs. I don't even know what a Hanafuda is, but I don't think I've got one. Light gun, I don't usually have. I have got a light gun now because Sinden have released one and it's really good. But for this set, I don't want light gun games. Don't typically have a mouse plugged in. Definitely don't want any Mahjong controller. So I think I'm okay with those selected. And here, the directions. I don't care, I'll have as many as you like for the joystick. I don't want to specify how many directions the joystick has to support. Now we were on something like, I've forgotten already, 8,200 or something, or 8,700. So if I hit search there, see where we've got to. 7,007, okay, so it's coming down again. Right, filters. What else? Players, I don't care if it's 1 player, 2 player, 3 player, whatever. I'll just take that as it comes, and I'll leave the rest. I don't want to tweak those, but obviously you can. Video. So again, this is saying, do you want to only bring in games that have a given orientation, or scroll horizontal or vertically only, or they've got a lot of details there. But no, I just want good games, really. Audio, again, that's just more specifics around the audio that you can filter if you want. I don't want to. I don't care. Just wherever it comes. I've already said I only want playable games. Categories. Now, categories is, I think, the most important one. Excuse me. So I could, if I want, filter by given categories, and I probably will in a second. But first, I think the best option might be this ratings one. So it's got 3 different ways to categorize what games you want based on a rating. So best games, if I hover over that, it says this bit is based on a list maintained by Antopisa and Progetto Snaps. I'll put again the link where this is in the comments. And it's basically a list maintained, and it's pretty regularly maintained, to try to categorize how good games are. But obviously, that's just a matter of opinion. So your favorite game might not be in the list or categorized in the right section as far as you're concerned. But I think broadly, it pretty much gets the right sort of data in there. It's pretty accurate. It's got games listed as you'd expect. The ones you've heard of are all marked as good, and you can see in the list here, these are the categories that they fall into. So I'd say I'd probably want a list of good and up. So if I select good and better, so it'd be good, very good, and best games included in that. We were on something like 7,200 or something. Now, if I filter based on that, hit search, I've come right down here to 1,350. So that makes a big change. And we could also do all time, which is selecting by year. So if I hover over that, you can see they're set by MAME-info or the MASH system on that URL. And you can say, I want the best all-time games in a given year. But again, I don't want to filter it by year. I'm happy whenever it's made. If it's a great game, I'm happy to play it. So I'll leave that one. And to be honest, I'm not sure where the average rating looks at or where that data comes from. So I haven't played around with that too much. But, you can experiment. Right, what I do want to do is take out some of the genres. So if you're not sure what sort of games some of these, or what sort of categories some of these are, the arcade, for example, like what's arcade category? If you scroll up on the right, you can see, oh, it's just a pinball one. Well, I don't want pinball. So I'll have ball and paddle, click that. I'm going to hold down control to set more than one. I don't want board games, don't want calculator, don't want casino. I'll have climbing, no. I'll have driving, no. I'll have fighter. So game. So what's game? If you look down here, you can see. I think it relates to gambling. That's why they call it game. Yeah, gambling. So I don't want that. Don't want game console. Don't want handheld. I'll have maze. I'll have, what else will I have? Platform. Shooter. Simulation. Wait, no, not simulation. I think simulation's weird stuff here. Where are we? Shooter. Simulation pet management. I mean, what game is that anyway? Simulation slot machines, sports. Yeah, we have sports. System, tablet, tabletop. I don't think I want any of those ones. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Utilities, watch, and whack-a-mole. No, I'm good. Right, press select. I think, what was it, 1,200 or something? So search. 1,145. So yeah, most of the games aren't in those kind of obscure categories that I took out, but you can see that that's brought it down. 1145 is not bad. So going back to the filters, you can see on the section here in the categories that we just filtered, it isn't showing me the ones. Oh, it is showing me the ones I clicked. If you look closely, the ones I've selected are in black, and the ones I haven't selected are in blue. So it's not that clear, but hopefully you can make that out just to remind you what you've clicked on before. Now that will probably do me. I mean, section 1,100 odd is okay. Now you could always obviously bump that up and just say, oh, I'll just have the very good. So if I go very good, so that will include very good and best. Let's see if I hit that search. I've got 445, which maybe for the purpose of this we'll run with, but I'd probably be happy with the 1,200 one. But anyway, I've come down from 44,000, was it to start with, down to 445 games that are most likely going to be what I'm after. And maybe you never want to play a platform game or something, in which case this would chop down further. So you can use that categories to really reduce that number. Additional information. What else was there? You can even put similar to a game that you like, and then choose or particular categories, recommended games based on that. So there's lots of options to reduce this. Extra. Okay, just more options again. I don't think I want to reduce it based on any of these particular ones. I'm happy with any of those really. And other, again, more categories that I don't think I'd use. It's mostly I go into categories and the ratings and the genres to filter it down. I think that's the most useful bit of info. And it might be that you use all this selection criteria, and then you find that the game that you're keen on playing wasn't included in it. Well, you can always just manually copy across the few that don't get picked up, especially if you're running an unmerged Romset version, because they don't require any other files to exist. They're all in the same Romset. Okay, so back to this. Let's say you've got to the point where you're happy with the number of games, and you can preview these because they're all down here. And looking down there, you've got some classics, Blazing Star on the Neo Geo, Bomb Jack. There'll be loads of cave shooters as well because they're all good, like the Didonpachi set. What else we got? A couple of Death Smiles, that's amazing. Although I don't know how well it runs on portable systems like the Pi. Defender. Diet Go-Go, never heard of it, but apparently it's good. Okay. Dig Dug. Yeah, loads of Didonpachis. Though I don't know why Didonpachi, like the original one, isn't there, because that's great. Maybe that's categorized by that system as good and not really good or something. Oh no, there it is. It is really good, and that's true. It is. Double Dragon, Drift Out, and then you can scroll through the various pages. I'm obviously not going to do this for them all. Final Fight, amazing game. Fever SOS, Galaxian Gallagher and 88 version. Oh, and Garou Mark of the Worlds on the Neo Geo, amazing graphics. Definitely got to try that if you haven't seen that before. Yeah. Anyway, bunch of games. Right now, the next thing you do is export this. What we're going to export it. It's going to generate a file that will let us strip out these games from our main list. Again, make backups. Don't do this on your sort of sold copy of something. So we hit options, and then we hit export the results. Then we get options. There's loads of really good options here, loads of different formats you could export it to for different purposes. So CLI Main Pro, maybe you can just rebuild a set to the criteria of the games you want. So you could recreate them, but you've probably got them anyway in your set, so we don't need to do that. Review it easily in a CSV, so you can manipulate it in loads of different ways. Maybe you're just using a TrackMead front end and you want to filter based on that. So yeah, it's flexible. But what we're going to do is this one, Windows batch file, because this will let us do a really simple copy, basically. So I'm going for Windows batch file. Don't need any other options chosen, and I'm going to hit export. And you can see that it's exported it. If you've got Chrome, it appeared on the bottom, Firefox on the top right somewhere. Oh, and my Firefox blocked it, so I will fix that and show you the file. Okay, so here's the file. It downloaded, it named at the top. In fact, where was it? If I go options, export the results, you can see the title up here, so you can tweak that to be whatever you like. It doesn't matter. I don't tend to put spaces in file names usually, but you can call it whatever you like. It won't really matter. Here's the file. So it downloads that in a zip format. I think if it tried downloading a .cmd directly, the antivirus might not like it or something. But anyway, so it's downloaded zip. The only reason it's got brackets 1 is because I've done it a couple of times before. So it's just saying, oh, you've already got a file and called that. Anyway, I've opened the zip, and inside is a .cmd. And I think a .cmd is the same as a .bat. It's the same, sort of ends up being the same result anyway. So keeping it .cmd is fine. It's just a process that Windows will run through. And we want to out the zip file. So I'm just going to extract it by clicking and dragging it out of the zip. I'm going to replace the file. The only reason that's popping up is because, again, I've been doing it earlier. So here it is, and we're going to edit that. So you just want that on your computer somewhere where we can edit it. I'll get rid of that, and I'm going to right mouse on that, and I'm going to press edit. Okay, here we are. So this is the contents of the file that Arcade Database has generated. There's only a couple of bits we need to tweak. Where you see rem, that I think that's short for remark, so it means it's a comment, so it'll just completely ignore this, so you can put whatever text you like after a rem. The bit we want to change is the main root, because that's a variable that it uses further down. It hard codes this value, so that's what you want to change. You want to change that to point to where all your Romsets are. So if we get this example up, you can see mine in this instance are in a folder D Arcade. So fine, I've got 7,000 in D Arcade, and I'll go to this file and replace it with D Arcade because that's where they are. This is just setting up the value of the variables. You can ignore it, but it's got a remark to explain what each one's doing, and it'll run through all of those examples. And what we want to do is down here where it says complete here to do some action, we want it to do an action where it finds a file. So it's got an example here that if it exists, do this process that we'll run through. And what we want to do is we want it to go through your list, find any game that you've selected if it exists, and if it finds it, if it's in your Romsets, it will copy it out to put it in its own folder, so you get a smaller subset. So copy is an important process as opposed to move. You don't really want to change the sets that you've got. So we're going to remove the remark here to make it work. So delete, 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 delete. There we go. So if exists, main root. So if exists in this path up here, it thinks that my Romsets will be in a folder called titles. They're not. They're just in this folder. So I'm going to take titles out like that. So main root, Romset, and PNG. So this example is geared for maybe grabbing snapshots or screenshots of arcade games and putting them in a folder. But I want the actual Romsets, the game Romsets. So Romset name dot, and I know they're zip, so swap PNG for zip. So if exists, if it finds the Romset exists, then copy the Romset. So again, got to move that directory. Copy the Romset, which ends in .zip, to a folder called in main root again, and then, or you can put whatever you like in here. The path doesn't matter, but well, it does matter, but you can change it. Main root, I'll keep it there. So D Arcade, and it's given me a folder called titles.clones. Well, I won't have a folder called titles.clones. I'll call it my subset or something of great games. There you go. My subset of great games. Now, for this to work, that's got to exist. So if we go to the folder where we ROMs in, I'm going to create a new folder called my subset of great games. So that's in the same folder as the main Romsets. There we go. So let's read that again. If exists, the romset.zip, copy the romset.zip to my new folder and call the file that I've copied the same Romset, and I need it called .zip again. And that is all you need to change. So I'm going to save that. And what I'm going to do, I'll close that. What I'm going to do, you can run this from anywhere, but just for ease of explaining, I am going to run it from the same directory here. So I'm going to paste it in here, and I should find that. Let's sort it by type. There we go. And there it is. That's the file we've changed. Main search. Well, it's whatever you call it. .cmd. If you don't see .cmd or .zip or .anything, it's because up on the view you need to hit file name extensions here, and you should definitely click that. I think that's, it makes things a lot easier to see what the full file name is. So once you've got file name extensions done, that should be fine. Right, now I'm just going to hit enter, and hopefully that'll work. So to run it, you can double click it or hit enter. and there it is running through the process. And it looks like it's not finding all of those. Okay, 1 second, let me double check that. Okay, so I think the problem was I ran a .cmd from when I was testing it earlier, not the latest one that I just created. So again, here's the file we want to run. You can right mouse on that, hit edit, and see the content. So we put this is the path, and the other bit we changed is saying if it exists, like the zip file, copy it from where it is to where you want to put it. The romset variable is just set up there, so it's just the zip rom file name without the extension. That's why we're putting .zip on. So yeah, the only bits you need to change are the path where your roms are, and then you make sure that reflects that, and then you put your new destination over here, and that's it. So we close that, and to make it easier to see what's going on rather than it opening and closing, you can run this from a command prompt rather than double clicking it. And to do that, because we're in the path we want to do it from, you can just click up here and then type CMD, press enter, and you get a little window up where you can type it. We want to run whatever the command sort of batch file is. It's called main search. I'd probably call it something better than that, but yeah, we've just used the default. So up here, if I type main, and rather than type it all, you can just tab, and then it'll auto-complete. So that's the file name here that we want to run, and then we press enter. And hopefully, yeah, I can see as it runs down there, it's finding a lot of those files. I think, I'm trying to remember how many we had in main here. We had, close that, 445 in our shortlist. So that's running down 445 to see if they exist in my subset of ROMs I had. There we go, job completed, and you can see that on quite a few it's copied the files. There's probably an example in here where it hasn't. There we go. So it's tried to look for a game called Winning Run Suzuka Grand Prix, and I can only guess that Winning Run Suzuka Grand Prix is not something that's currently emulated in FB Neo because it hasn't found it to copy it. So that's why it hasn't done that one. So whilst we had about 450 in our list, I think if I go in this folder here, I'm not going to have 450. 349, there we go. But now I can be pretty confident that I've got 349 Romsets games that will just work in FB Neo without me having to scroll through thousands and thousands. And if I wanted to filter it down further, maybe only one platform games, I could do that with that tool as well in exactly the same way and play those. So there we go. Hopefully that was easy to follow-ish. If you've got any questions, put it in the comments. And if you've got any other ways of filtering games, let me know. But I think Romlister application is a really good way of doing it. And the Arcade Italia Arcade Database here is also a fantastic way of doing it. It makes it really easy for more sensible, smaller sets. And as always, thanks very much for watching. Cheers.